Good. I hope you're going to be getting outside today for a while and just enjoying this beautiful sun and this beautiful weather before winter comes upon us. But who knows? We may have some more nice fall days. We don't know here, do we? No. Okay, so today we are finishing up with talking about the book called The Book of Joy by Douglas Abrams, and it features the Archbishop Desmond Tutu and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We've been talking about the 8 obstacles to joy. We've talked about 6 of them, and they are fear, anxiety, and stress, frustration and anger, sadness and grief, despair, loneliness, envy. And today we're going to talk about suffering and adversity and illness and the fear of death. And one of the things that I've really loved about in the writing of this book is that in all of the obstacles to joy, they give you ideas on how to move beyond those obstacles, really concrete things that we can be doing to turn those obstacles into something other than obstacles. So the 8 pillars of joy are perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, and today we're going to be talking about compassion and generosity. So first we're going to talk about the 7th obstacle to joy, and that is suffering and adversity, passing through difficulties. Now, there is a Tibetan saying that says that it's actually the painful experiences that shine the light on the nature of happiness, that they do this by bringing joyful experiences into sharp relief. So I'm going to explain more what that means. First of all, the Dalai Lama said to the Archbishop, he said, "You can see this in an entire generation that has experienced great difficulties like you, Archbishop. When you got your freedom, you really felt joyous. Now the new generation who were born after, they don't know the true joy of freedom, and they complain more." So we had the opportunity to go see the Harriet Tubman movie. If you've not seen that, it's a fabulous movie. She freed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of slaves after she herself got free. And there was a point in the movie where the people that she was working with, where they were kind of starting to give up and say that they could no longer go in and save, rescue as many slaves as they could, that it was too dangerous. And it was leading up to the Civil War anyway. And she got up in front of them, and with just such passion, she looked at some of them and she said, "You have never experienced slavery. And for many of you," and she was looking at people of color who had been free for a long time, "for many of you, you have forgotten what it was like. But for me, it is fresh. For me, I remember it. And because of that, I will do everything that I can to save as many slaves as I possibly can." And it was her impassioned speech that helped to continue that process of going in and rescuing slaves. And it was because she had just been through that adversity that she had that passion and that power. And I was thinking about that for women, it's been just a little over 100 years ago that we got our right to vote, that there were suffragettes out there, and they hit upon a lot of opposition, they hit upon a lot of suffering for the right for us to be able to vote. And I found out, I didn't realize that my grandma herself was a suffragette. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't get it either for a long time. But they sharply appreciated their right to vote, and they exercised that right to vote because they went through that experience. But when you look at our culture today, there's a lot of women and girls who don't exercise their right to vote because they didn't go through the pain and suffering of not having had that right and fighting for that right, and how important it is for us as women to exercise our right to vote, because it's not been that long since we've had that right. But that's just an example of how going through that adversity, it brings it into a sharp, clear focus for us to really appreciate what we have. And could you agree with that? We go through many things and of adversities, and when we learn to really appreciate what we have because of those adversities. Now, another thing that the Dalai Lama says, and I think any of us who are parents will get this, that we have a tendency to want to protect our children from pain and suffering. Anybody? It's the most natural and normal thing that we want to protect them. And yet what he says is when we do that, we rob them of their ability to be able to grow and to learn from adversity. And the author says that he remembered that Auschwitz survivor Edith Eva Eger, who we talked about before, said that the spoiled, pampered children were the first ones to die in Auschwitz because they were waiting for somebody to come and rescue them, and they didn't know how to take care of themselves. And I thought about this because I've been doing this for a long time, even beyond becoming the spiritual leader. I was just here in a capacity to be with people, and even in my own circle of friends and family, how many people deal with children who are drug addicts, who are alcoholics. And that is one of the hardest journeys, I think, for a parent to have to traverse with a child, because it's not easy to set those healthy boundaries. And it's a lot easier because we want to protect them. Number one, we don't want them to die. Number two, we don't want them to go to prison. But yet again, there is that point where we rob them of that opportunity for their own growth because it's actually their journey. And that is one of the hardest ones that I see people go through. And there's no easy answer in that one. I always just support people wherever they are because there is no easy answer in that one. The Archbishop also explained that suffering and adversity, it can either embitter us or it can ennoble us. And when we go through a period of adversity, the difference is whether we can find or are willing to choose to find meaning in that adversity. If we are willing to be open to that, it can ennoble us. But if we see ourselves as victims, as we see and one of the things they talk about a lot is when we focus on me, I, we squeeze our world in, we shrivel up, and we're not going to have what this whole book is about, which is that experience of that deep joy. So it's important for us to be open when we're going through something, to know that there's something here for me. And we talked about that a few times in the last few weeks as we've been journeying through this book. And they say also that because of the shock of suffering, our arrogance falls away. And what happens in that is that we become much more present to other people when they are going through adversity, because we want to do whatever we can to help them so that they're not experiencing that deep suffering by themselves. Okay, so that's going through adversity. The last obstacle to joy is illness and the fear of death. And what they talk about is that illness is one of the most common things that we deal with in our society and in our culture, especially because it's all about, everything that we see on TV is about having to take medications for all these illnesses that we're going to get someday. We're bombarded with it. It's in our culture, and we see a lot of people who deal with a lot of different illnesses. And that this is one of the most common sources of suffering and adversity, but that even in illness and even in the facing death, that we can still find meaning and we can still find growth in those experiences. And actually what we do find is that when people are going through that, they do have more of a tendency to wake up and to really realize what is valuable, what do they value, and to make changes in their lives, right? Yeah, absolutely. It's almost a cliche that, when people are dealing with a life-threatening illness, that they transform their lives. Daniel Abrams said that he worked on a book many years ago with a physician who cared for ill and dying patients, and he made a powerful distinction between healing and curing. He said curing involves the resolution of the illness, but was not always possible. Healing, he said, was coming to wholeness and could happen whether or not the illness was curable. And I know in my work, I have been with a lot of people who have gone through life-threatening illnesses and who are facing the imminence of their death. And what I see happen almost without fail is the fight, because we are creatures that want to live, and we will do everything that we can to live, and we will fight, and we will fight, and we will fight. But there comes a point when there is a surrender. And that surrender to me is the healing. That's the point at which there's this letting go into whatever it's going to be. And it's the most peaceful place. I mean, it's such a beautiful place where people finally get there to just say, okay. And for some, they do go on and they transition. For some, they get better. But it's that place where we can finally let go, and we can finally let God. So one of the things that they say is what is important to remember is that sooner or later, death comes to us, and to make our life meaningful while we're alive. Not to wait until something like that happens. To really look at our lives today, you guys, and to say, what am I doing in my life that is not lining up with what I value? What is it that I can let go of that is not adding the meaning to my life? Because the reality is, if you were facing something like that, you would change that in a heartbeat. So don't wait. Don't wait for something to happen before you live the life that you really want to live. Okay? Okay. And I love this. The Dalai Lama said, "Many people on this planet worry about going to hell, but this is not much use. There's no need to be afraid. While we remain on the earth worrying about hell, about death, about all the things that could go wrong, we're going to have lots of anxiety, and we will never find joy and happiness. If you are truly afraid of hell," which I know we're not, "but you need to live your life with some purpose, especially through helping others." And this is one of the things that I love so much about this man. He said, and he slapped the archbishop on his wrist playfully because they have this wonderful relationship. "I prefer to go to hell than to heaven. I can solve more problems in hell. I can help more people there." And that's just who he is. You know, I really want to encourage you, if you've not read or listened to some podcasts with the Dalai Lama, to do that, because it is so beautiful and pure, the message that he has for us. Okay, so that's the last two obstacles to joy. So now we're going to talk about the last two pillars to joy. And they are compassion and generosity. And this is really more about generosity of spirit. So these two really do mesh with one another. So with compassion, of course, they talk about too much self-centered thinking, me, I, again, is just going to keep us in a space that is not a good space. And the antidote to that is to care about the well-being of others. Now, in a book called A Fearless Heart, How the Courage to Be Compassionate Can Transform Our Lives, it says compassion is a sense of concern that arises when we are confronted with another's suffering, and we feel motivated to see that suffering relieved. And he adds that compassion is what connects the feeling of empathy. So we feel empathy towards something, but compassion is what motivates us to move into action, to be there in whatever way that we can be there to help alleviate, or to just help somebody through that time when they're going through that. So one of the questions that was asked was, since the word compassion literally means suffering with, it was, I have enough problems of my own, why should I worry about being more compassionate and think about others who are suffering? And the Dalai Lama said, it's because we are social creatures and we need each other. And the reality is, we're not intended to do this life alone, and we can't do this life alone. That we are interconnected. And so we are going to have a happier life when we remember that, and when we live from that, when we truly want to act to help alleviate the suffering that is around us. And you guys, not just in our small circles, but to expand that out beyond our family dynamics, out beyond our church dynamics, really to expand that to include everyone. And it's not that, and I love because, in the book they say, obviously, we're not going to be the answer to everything. But we can be the answer to something, and we can be the answer to someone. We can be the answer in the moment, but we can't be if we stay small, if we stay contracted within ourselves. I was thinking about this past week and having this bazaar and this yard sale. And I'm going to tell you, it was really a few volunteers for a humongous job. We had maybe 18 to 20 overall volunteers for the entire week. And it was a week-long experience, starting Sunday afternoon and ending last night at 8 o'clock. And we made $1,745. And I was thinking, we've got to start doing something differently. I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a moment. Because for me, this ministry is my spiritual home. This ministry is where I came in those doors, and for the first time in my life, I knew a truth that was different from anything I had ever been taught. And it resonated deeply in my soul. And it reminded me that I am good. It reminded me that God is good. It reminded me that I have some power in the experiences that I have in my life. It changed my life. And I have to say that probably for most of us here, we have had that experience. And the reality is that churches in general have been declining in attendance. They have been declining in financial support. But I think we have a different thing to offer here, and it's an important thing. And it's not just for us, you guys. This is for what we are today, but it's for what we are becoming, and it's for what is going to be here for the next generation. And what I would love to see is that there is such a stepping up in taking ownership of our ministry with time, talent, and treasure. This becomes so important that we don't have to spend a week raising $1,745 because that's what we need to meet our budget, that we can spend a week out on the streets doing something that matters to our community, because that's what Jesus would have us do, would be out there doing something. But we've got to get past this consciousness that keeps us small in who we are individually within this ministry and who we are as a ministry itself. And I want to call us up higher to really be in service to what we are together, and to give of your time, to give of your talent, and to give of your treasure. Because why would we, I think we pay taxes, we give to all these things. Well, I shouldn't say we give to all these, but we pay taxes, but we can give to something that matters to us and that is going to matter to people in the future. And so I just want you to prayerfully consider how you can step up. And, I was thinking, even with this thing up here, we need a big screen TV, and I'm sure there's somebody out there who could probably underwrite a big screen TV for this ministry. And so I'm just calling us up to a higher place so that this ministry can finally get out beyond these walls, because I'm ready to get out beyond these walls and not have to spend so much time in here doing all these fundraisers. I'm off my soapbox for a minute. Maybe, we'll see. Okay. So they say the incredible thing is that I went back. I'm on generosity now, aren't I? No, I'm not. I'm on compassion. Sorry, I got on my soapbox and I forgot where I was. The incredible thing is that when we think of alleviating other people's suffering, that our own suffering is in fact reduced. And that's a really great kind of equation, isn't it? That when we get outside of ourselves and we help others, our suffering is reduced. Okay, the last pillar, and here it is, generosity, is the last pillar to joy. And we know, Scripture tells us, it is as we give that we receive, whatever it is that we're giving. When we're giving love, when we're giving kindness, when we're giving joy, when we're giving whatever it is, who's the first person that receives it? I do, because it's flowing through me. So it is in giving that I am already receiving it. I think it was the Dalai Lama. He said, it is when we grow in self-forgetfulness In a remarkable way, I mean, we discover that we are filled with joy. I've sometimes joked and said, God doesn't know very much about math, because when you give to others, it should be that you are subtracting from yourself. But in this incredible kind of way, I've certainly found that not to be the case so many times. You give, and it then seems like, in fact, you are making space for more to be given to you. And of course, that's what Scripture tells us. That's what the great Master told us. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, and oozing out. Exactly. And a great example they use is the Dead Sea. You know, there's this body of water that all of this beautiful living water from rivers and places are going in to this place, but there's no outlet. And that's why it's the Dead Sea. And it's a great analogy for us. If we're not in that flow of giving, you know, we are the ones creating the blocks in our lives, whatever it is that we're talking about here. I want to share this with you too, because I thought this was interesting, and you can read this in the book. I didn't cite what the studies were, but there was a study that showed that generosity is one of the 4 fundamental brain circuits that map with long-term well-being. I want you to hear that again. Generosity is one of the 4 fundamental brain circuits that map with long-term well-being. It is important that we have a sense of purpose. And what he's talking about here is fundamentally how we are able to contribute and be generous to others. That's that sense of purpose, how we feel needed by and of value to others. And having that sense of purpose correlates with a 23% reduction in death from all causes. In addition, people with a sense of purpose were half as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease after 7 years. And a large meta-analysis revealed that volunteering reduces the risk of death by 24%. Hello. I know y'all are going to sign up for everything now because you want to reduce your risk of death. And the last thing that not the last thing, but one of the things I think was important to reiterate is that the aberration, we are fundamentally good. The aberration is not the good person. The aberration is the bad person. And the reminder, you guys, we are made for goodness. And most people are fundamentally good. And there are people who have lost their way, and we know that. But we have to focus on that goodness. So what I want to close with today is something my sweet friend Sue Ann reminded me of, and it's the poem Desiderata. And it really sums up what this 4 weeks has been about. So it goes like this. I had it up for the screens, but now I'll just share it with you. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in the silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others. Even to the dull and the ignorant, they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter. For always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery, but let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive God to be. And whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, my friends, it is still a beautiful world. And it ends by saying, be cheerful, but I'm going to end by saying, be joyful. So I hope that you have gained as much as I have out of this last 4 weeks. It has shifted me in so many ways. I found myself just being able to utilize these teachings in certain situations that have come up. And I'm so grateful for them. And I'm grateful for this opportunity that I've had to share these wonderful teachings with all of you as well. And I say to you, namaste, namaste.